Wait. There's something I have to do before we start this podcast. Oh. Okay. I just declassified the podcast using the Donald Trump method of mentally thinking about doing something and then it happens. So you're all free to watch this podcast now. It's been declassified. You have nothing to worry about, of course. This think method, well, it didn't begin with Donald Trump. Remember another con man, Harold Hill in The Music Man. He had the think method. You didn't have to learn how to read music. He didn't have to teach kids how to play all these instruments. No, you just think. Just think, and you'll be able to play Beethoven's Minuet in G. Stupid me. I've been practicing piano all these years for nothing, and all I had to do was think, boys. Think. Anyway, this is the Richard Bey Talk podcast, and thank you for joining me. I'm here with my producer, Albert Reinoso. We're both bearded now, and there was some discussion on the board whether I should keep the beard or shave the beard. I would say it's like 60 keep it, 40 not. On the 40 side, they say, well, it makes you look too old. What's your opinion?
I don't think so at all. I think keep it for several reasons. Number one, it's natural and it makes you look, very distinguished. And number two, it's easier to take care of than to shave every day.
Yes, always good advice from a man who has a beard. Thank you, Albert.
I have long beard here. You know what this beard is called?
What?
It's called the Van Dyke.
I thought it was the Billy Goat
or
beard.
You could call it a Billy Goat beard.
Okay. All right. So anyway, the think method, I don't think it's going to work for Donald Trump, and neither did the appointment of a special master. Special master. Boy, doesn't that sound ominous? It sounds like you're going to be in a dungeon somewhere and the guy's going to go, I'm your special master. On your knees, slave. Anyway, the DOJ approved his selection or his lawyer's selection of a special master. And they thought, oh, this guy, Judge Deary, he's a Republican. We'll get what he wants. We'll get what he wants, what Trump wants. But it didn't exactly turn out that way. This has come back to bite them in the ass. And the special master is now questioning a lot of things, like the allegations that the FBI planted evidence at Mar-a-Lago, like Trump had the ability to just think something and declassify documents. It's not going the way that they planned. And Judge Deary is a Republican, but as we know, there are some Republicans that still believe in the rule of law, as we found out in the Sixth Circuit, where two Trump-appointed judges joined an Obama judge to overturn the decision of Judge Cannon, which was universally condemned, ridiculed, and thought to be, just out there. So anyway, the question turns to, should we indict Trump if it's found that he broke the laws? Now, I remember when during the time of Watergate and Richard Nixon, everybody said, well, the system worked. Looked how the system worked. I would always say, no, the system didn't work. It was circumvented. He was pardoned. There was never an indictment or a determination of the criminal acts that he participated in. It didn't work. And of course, now there is the debate, we can't indict a former president because that makes us look like a banana republic. But I think the exact opposite is true. I think if you allow your elected president to actually break the legislative laws and say he's above the law, that's what makes us look like a banana republic. I mean, other established democracies around the world have indicted and, yes, even convicted their former presidents. In Israel, the former president was indicted and sent to prison for rape. In Brazil, Lula, who was convicted and sent to prison, he may be the next president. He's running now, and it looks like he's going to be in the lead. But Brazil went ahead and charged him and actually sent him to prison. France, Sarkozy is under indictment. In Italy, Berlusconi. Oh, he's had so many different indictments, from everything from bribery to tax evasion to prostitution. And these are all respected democratic countries where they demonstrate that the elected leader is not above the law. Now, on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, Chris Christie opined about whether we should indict Trump or whether we will indict Trump, but he said that Donald Trump is making it easier and easier for him to eventually be indicted. Listen to this.
Chances that he could be indicted are probably increasing there.
Look, I think these are all self-inflicted wounds by Donald Trump, and you know, one of the things that I would always say to clients are, you know, don't out loud fight with the Department of Justice. Like, you know, we'll fight in court and do the things we need to do. He's doing the exact opposite. His lawyers aren't fighting any of this in court. They're really not. They're not putting forward any of these arguments. He's putting forward all these arguments on television. There comes a point where prosecutors are human too, and you want to keep daring them. They may just actually do it. I still don't think he's going to be charged, but I will say this much about what Dan said. The more you absolutely antagonize with nonsense arguments on television that your lawyers won't make in court because they're afraid they'll be sanctioned if they do because they have no evidence, you're pushing yourself closer to a self-inflicted indictment. And I don't want to see that happen just because I don't think it's good for our country. But he's pushing himself in that direction.
Right. And don't forget that Chris Christie used to be, he's a former federal prosecutor, although I'll never forget the Republican convention where he led a kangaroo court and a screaming mob to scream, lock her up, and predict that Hillary Clinton would be going to jail. So he may be wrong on both counts. Trump may be indicted, and Hillary Clinton, of course, it's now, 6 years later, and she doesn't even have a parking ticket. So don't forget the January 6th Commission, their last hearing is this Wednesday at 12 o'clock. You know, so I'll be watching that. And over the weekend, a Republican representative on with Chuck Todd talked about the fact that the Republicans are all discussing, if they win the House, they're going to impeach Joe Biden. Impeach Joe Biden. I mean, of course, that esteemed journalist, Tim, no, not Tim Russett. I always call him Tim Russett. I can't even remember his name right now. But what's his name on Meet the Press? The guy with the beard. Chuck Todd. Right. Okay.
He's so esteemed, you can't remember his name.
Well, he has a beard. He does have a beard, but he never asked the representative, you're going to indict? That's what the Republicans want to win the House for? To indict Joe Biden? Not indict him, impeach Joe Biden. But he never asked, what for? What are you impeaching him for? What are the charges? So if the Republicans get the House, we're certainly going to have investigations left and right, an investigation of the January 6th investigation, just like they had they appointed John Durham to investigate the investigation of Donald Trump by Robert Mueller. We'll have investigations of investigations again. And possibly an impeachment. But there are other things that we do have to look out for. Of course, the Durham investigation is over. Big nothing burger. Nothing happened at it. Benghazi. Maybe we can have some more Benghazi investigations. But there are other things that we should be concerned about. Now, Rick Scott came out with a plan for the economy. And Rick Scott, he's not only a senator, but he's in charge of the Republican senatorial campaign for the entire country. And he proposed that every 5 years, we look at Medicare and Social Security for cuts. Yes, that's in the plan. And I'm telling you, he is in charge of the campaigns nationwide. But he's not the only one. In New Hampshire, Republican Don Bolduc is running for the Senate against Hassan, a Democrat. He told his crowd getting government out of Social Security, getting government money with strings attached to it has to stop. So if he's elected, he'll join Blake Masters, who said, maybe we should privatize Social Security. We'll have only private retirement accounts and get the government out of it. Or J.D. Vance, who said that the biggest problems we face in facing fiscal sanity are Medicare and Social Security. Now, everybody's arguing, what's going to be the big issue? Is it going to be abortion? Is it going to be immigration? DeSantis tried to flip the focus back to immigration from abortion, which is mobilizing, especially female voters all over the country who are registering Democratic left and right. And young people are motivated like no other time by that particular issue. But I think we should also highlight the Republican attitudes about Medicare and Social Security and get that senior citizen vote. Now, a lot of these candidates backtrack. They backtrack on abortion. They scrub it off of their websites with bleach. But don't be fooled. These proposals could be, well, almost as devastating for the Republicans as abortion. Probably not as devastating, but somewhere in there. And it's something to be concerned about. And remember, a lot of this started with Ronald Reagan. When we passed Medicare, was it 64 or 65? Reagan tried to rally the country to halt the establishment of Medicare. Oh, it was a terrible thing. It was socialism. Socialism. Oh my God, we won't have freedom in this country. When you're older and you're getting your Medicare, you're going to tell your grandchildren what it was like to be free. Listen to this.
Well, you and I can do a great deal. We can write to our congressmen, to our senators. We can say right now that we want no further encroachment on these individual liberties and freedoms. And at the moment, the key issue is we do not want socialized medicine. You and I can do this. The only way we can do it is by writing to our congressman, even if we believe that he's on our side to begin with, write to strengthen his hand, give him the ability to stand before his colleagues in Congress and say, I have heard from my constituents and this is what they want. Write those letters now, call your friends and tell them to write them. If you don't, this program, I promise you, will pass just as surely as the sun will come up tomorrow. And behind it will come other federal programs that will invade every area of freedom as we have known it in this country. Until, one day, as Norman Thomas said, we will awake to find that we have socialism. And if you don't do this, and if I don't do it, one of these days, you and I are going to spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Oh, don't cry, Sonny. Little Jimmy, oh, I'm so grateful you came to see me released from the hospital. But don't cry. My cancer's in remission. But the terrible thing is, you have no freedom. Oh, if I'd only known, if I'd only listened to Ronnie. In the old days, I had the freedom to stay at home and die. I had the freedom to sell the house to pay for the medical bills. But now, I've sacrificed American freedom for my own life. How unpatriotic of me. Oh, yes. You think that's happening? Or are people saying, thank God for Medicare? Huh? That's what I say. Let me tell you a little story. I was running one day. Well, I have to set this up properly. Um, there was a long period of time when I didn't have health insurance at all. For sometimes I had it from the union. I had a great union plan, and then you go to Cobra when you're not working, and then after Cobra was gone, there were a couple of years I didn't have health care, and it was okay because I was healthy, but the gamble worked out. And then Obamacare came in, and I got a great plan under Obamacare. I made too much money to qualify for a supplement, so I got no government help. But the plan was great. I think it was a gold plan, not the platinum plan. But in the last 2 months of that plan, before I got Social Security, you get Social Security in the first month when you're turning 65. So I'm turning 65 in July 1st, July 22nd, but July 1st, Medicare kicks in. So 1 week, 2 months before this, I said, all right, I'm going to cancel my insurance plan. I'm healthy. Nothing's wrong with me. I'll save, $1,000 or $1,200. No, it was actually $1,600, and I'll be fine. So I'm out jogging, and all of a sudden, I can't move half my face. And I'm going, what? I try to whistle. I can't whistle. And so I come home and I sit down and I look up facial paralysis. And it could be a stroke, it could be Bell's palsy, but it seems more like Bell's palsy because it doesn't have all the other symptoms of a stroke. I called my best friend who's a doctor, and he says, get to the emergency room right now. He goes, you might be stroking out. And I said, I'm not going to the emergency room and getting an $8,000 bill, and I have no insurance. I said, I'm 99.9% sure it's Bell's palsy. So he was yelling at me and calling me an idiot and whatever. He's a doctor. So July 1st, the first day of Medicare, I run to the neurologist, and he gives me the tests, and he says, you have Bell's palsy, and there's no cure. I could have shot a steroid in you a week ago, but it really wouldn't do very much. It might have made it last, for a shorter period. And Medicare paid for the neurological exam and my repeat visits there. So thank God for Medicare. Well, another thing that, you probably have seen this, but I'm going to talk about it a bit. You've seen the Trump rallies where the people in the audience raise their, it looks like Nuremberg. Sieg Heil! But it's one finger. Here, can you see? One finger. And reportedly, it's the QAnon hand signal. Where one goes, we go all. I think that's the saying. But it is so bizarre to watch these people, these cultists, all salute together at once. So I'm going to tell you, and it's not just one time. Trump had a rally in North Carolina. It happened again this weekend. Take a look at this.
Department of Justice that refuses to investigate egregious acts of voting irregularities and fraud. And we have a president who is cognitively impaired and in no condition to lead our country, which may end up in World War III. We're a nation that no longer has a free press and has no fair press any longer. Fake news is all you get, and they are truly the enemy of the people. We are a nation where free speech is no longer allowed, where crime is rampant like never before, where the economy has been collapsing.
I mean, come on. Did you ever believe that you would live in a country where there was something like this? I mean, I know we had the German-American Bund in, what was it, 1938. They filled in Madison Square Garden. But this? Come on. So this past weekend, there was another rally, and there was more of this one. Okay? And reportedly, a security guard walked around and told people to put their hands down, that they didn't want people to give this salute all in unison. And one guy was very upset, and he said, "I'm an American. I can do whatever I want." I think that he was confusing the right to bear arms with the right to raise arms. But so that's one more thing. They're saying it's the QAnon salute and the QAnon music playing. So now, I mean, oh my God, you need a frickin' scorecard. This is worse than the Marvel universe. With who is this person in this one unit? Miss Marvel and this guy Loki and this person, female Spider-Man, female Batman. Oh my God, the universe is crawling with superheroes. And our country is crawling with right-wing nutcases. You have the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, the QAnon cultists. There's something even here in Florida called the Goyim Defense League. According to the Anti-Defamation League, the number of anti-Semitic attacks in Florida went up 71% in 1 year. And they cited all of these people that I talked to you about. Not so much QAnon, although they're a dangerous group too. They think Democrats are pedophiles who eat their victims. They're a satanic cult, the Democrats. Remember the Comet Pizza thing, you know? So anyway, it's just hard to wrap your head around this sort of stuff. But it's always been here to some degree, even back when I did People Are Talking in the 1980s. Back then, remember the Nazi skinheads? Remember Geraldo had them on his show and they broke his nose and he was on the cover of Time magazine? It was the first time I think somebody used the term trash TV. Well, as you watch this, remember there were the swastika, the buzzwords about capitalism and communism. Remember, Hitler blamed the Jews for being Jewish bankers and blamed the Jews for being communist leaders too. So, and at the very end of this, if you watch, you'll see how I averted a nose-breaking incident. So let's take a look at that clip.
Joining us right now is one of the members of that skinhead faction. Michael Sokolowski is a member of the White Justice Skinheads. He's for white power, but he says that he is not anti-black. He says that he is a segregationist. What do you mean you're not anti-black?
Well, we are not out to oppress any other race. By believing in white power, we believe in positive racism. There are two kinds of racism.
Okay.
There's positive and there's negative. Negative is out of stupidity and hate. We don't hate anybody. We are out there to promote our own, just as the many organizations are out there to promote the other races, the NAACP and organizations ad infinitum out there to promote the prosperity of the black race.
Okay, do you go out and bash blacks?
We do not go out and bash anybody. If there's any violence that comes to us, and then we take care of that, okay?
Okay, wait a second, I just noticed on your hand, could you lift that up for a second? You got a swastika under your hand there. And what is next, the American flag with what? American skin?
Crucified skinhead.
Crucified skinhead, but you think this is like a symbol of heroism? The Nazi symbol?
National Socialism is not necessarily against
Adolf Hitler was a good guy?
Well, I'm not so much into Adolf Hitler as
that's what that was his symbol,
movement.
You know.
Well, that's all good and well. It's also an ancient Aryan symbol. National Socialist Germany, the entire history has been rewritten by the establishment Zionist press.
Okay,
and
but Adolf Hitler was basically.
Well, I'm not here to talk about Adolf Hitler. I really don't care about Adolf Hitler.
But you have, this is Adolf Hitler's, that's a symbol of Nazi Germany on your hand.
Hitler knew nothing.
Well, I did not come here to discuss Adolf Hitler. I'm here to discuss what we are for and what we are against.
I know. But Adolf Hitler stood for some of the things that you're talking about. A pure country, a pure race.
Ultimately, this country was meant to be a pure white country.
How do you know
by
that?
the founding fathers, okay? It was written into the Constitution. History has been rewritten by the establishment, okay?
So whose history do you read?
I am a historical revisionist, all right? Now, you talk about the history of wars. The history of wars is written by the victors. The vanquished have next to nothing to say about history.
Well, now, thank God that Adolf Hitler didn't write our history books.
Now, I am
because
here
it certainly
to
was
talk
no
about
lie
what we
that there
are
was
for and
Auschwitz
what we are against. What we are against is the international capitalist communist conspiracy.
What? SWAT sticker.
What?
Come on, you the superior race?
I know, stand.
Right now, me and you.
Sir, no,
if
sit
I see you on
down.
the street, you're dead.
Sir, would you please sit down?
You hear me? A dead man.
All right. Well, I'll tell you one
By
thing.
the
You're
way,
gonna.
Abraham Lincoln was a white supremacist. If
All
you
right.
read what he said, he was a white
Hold
supremacist.
on for a second, sir. Please sit down.
6 million
I'm gonna.
Jews.
I'm
That
gonna.
bastard should be shot
Sir,
right there.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to sit down, and I'm going to ask a security guard to leave you if you have another outburst, okay? Because this is not between you and him. This is between you and me. Now, okay? Look at me. All right? You got what I said?
I heard you.
Okay.
Why do people...
Wow. All right, no broken noses on that show. So this whole thing about the capitalist conspiracy. Today it's George Soros. Today it's George Soros who is pulling the strings everywhere. A Jewish philanthropist has become the arch nemesis of QAnon and other right wingers. He was a survivor from the Holocaust, and he does great work around the world. But of course, in the eyes of the right wingers and the QAnon, he is the he's like a Marvel arch villain. Briefly, I'll tell you this story. In 2005. The British playwright David Hare, he wrote a play called Stuff Happens, and it was all about the Iraq War, and everything in the play was taken verbatim from things that the people had said. There was Colin Powell, there was Condoleezza Rice, there was George Bush. A friend of mine, Jay Sanders, known as J.O. Sanders now, terrific actor. I mean, this guy is a giant. He's got a booming voice. He's got a hulking presence. He played George Bush. I thought, I look at the program, how the hell can he play George Bush? He got the mentality so precise that you never questioned it for a second. So anyway, I have a good friend who you may know from radio, Jay Diamond, and we had gone to see the play together. And afterwards, we went up to the lobby and we were strolling far afield in the lobby. And all of a sudden, we look down the aisle, and Jay says, "Wait a second, that's George Soros." And I look over, and it is George Soros. And he says, "Let's go up to him." I said, No, sure, I don't want to bother him. He says, come on. There's not one bodyguard. There's no security. There's nothing. He's walking around in a rumpled suit. You know, like an old Jew going to see a play. And we both went up. We shook his hand. We thanked him for the good work he had done. And we went back to see the second act of the play. But I was amazed that there weren't guards around this guy. All right. So we do have a hurricane that's heading towards Florida. And it was heading right towards where I live. Look at this. Look at this picture. Oh, my God. What are we going to do? Here is where I live, if you can see this. Well, where I live part of the time. I'm up in New York a lot of the time. But I'm just about over here, okay? You can see that. But what you don't know is this. When the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, it wasn't the classified documents they were looking for. It was this, the magic Sharpie. The really magic marker. So I just took this and I took this over to the side, and miraculously, the hurricane now is going to the west coast of Florida and going to hit the panhandle where all the Republicans live. Oh, what else could this magic sharp? I wonder if it works if I wrote a check for $1 million. All right, so for those of you who are, well, even those who are not, Happy New Year, Shona Tova, and may God write you in the book of life with his magic Sharpie. He's really got a magic Sharpie. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please share it. Tell your friends about it. Say nice things about us. And subscribe. If you do, you will never miss 1 week of Richard Bey Talk. And as always, all my best. Take care.